Comes up big after the turnover. Brotzman throws it on the fake. Completes to Leafaw, the tight end. Kyle Leafaw inside the TCU 40.
Welcome, Bronco Nation, to another exciting video. I have the finale of the Boise State 2024 season preview series today with another incredible guest. On the Boise State Special Teams previews before, we've had Tyler Rousa, who's come on. Last year, we had Joel Velasquez. But this year is an incredibly special guest to have on the channel. And it's fitting, the fifth year of the channel overall, to have someone really big on. And honestly, from the time that I started doing the channel all the way back in 2020, this is somebody that I've had in mind that I've wanted to have on. He was one of my favorite players when he was at Boise State, and I've been wanting to work to a point where we could get him on. And today we have Kyle Brotzman, the Boise State punter / kicker from 2007 to 2010. He is in all of the record books for Boise State. And his kicking profile, he had 67 field goals made, which until last season was the #1 record for Boise State. And of course, Jonah Dalmas, being everything that he is, was able to break it. But it was a record that had stood until Jonah Dalmas came on the scene last year. 2007 freshman season of 88.9% completion percentage, field goal percentage, was still sixth overall in the Boise State record books. And his 238 PATs is #1 all time for Boise State. And that's a record I don't think will ever be broken. And then for punting, this guy wasn't just a kicker, he was also a punter for Boise State. Career average overall, 44.6 yards. It's currently second. James Ferguson Reynolds did just jump ahead last year with 45.5 points yards overall, but JFR still got a couple of years to go. So we'll see how that one goes. But for now, still second. Single season, 2008 stands second overall with 45.8 yards average that season. And he still holds the career long for the longest punt in school history with 75 yards. It's not been topped. And then overall for points wise as well, when you think about prolific point scorers, you think Brock Forsey, Ian Johnson, Jay Ajayi, Doug Barton, and all those guys are on the top list for Boise State points all time. But none of them are #1. #1 on that list is Kyle Brotzman. And as you heard me going through and giving all those numbers, some of those numbers in kicking, punting, he may be second now, but not a single punter or kicker in Boise State history is #1 or #2 in the record books for both punting and kicking. He's the only one to ever do it. And I have Kyle on today to talk about his time at Boise State and help me preview the Boise State 2024 special teams. Thanks for coming on, Kyle.
Appreciate you having me. Quite the introduction. Yeah, that's a lot.
A lot that happened, man. I mean, it was an impressive career. You talk about great kickers, great punters, and I think that right now we're going to talk about it in this preview. Boise State has two of the greatest individual kickers and punters in college football history. We're going to talk about their statistics. They're right there at the top. But when you talk about combined records, kicking and punting, handling both, which are not necessarily complementary, which is why you don't see a lot of players doing both at a high level. Nobody else tops the combined kicking punting GOAT, which is Kyle Brotzman. So today we're going to talk about your career at Boise State, and then we're going, just to give everybody an idea for this video, we're going to talk about your career at Boise State. We're going to do a little bit of a 2023 synopsis, talking about what the Boise State Special Teams did. We're going to talk about the 2024 preview, looking at new additions like Stacy Collins returning to the blue. We're going to talk about the kicking, the punting, the returning, the coverage, what Boise State did well, what they need to fix to really have a stellar year in 2024, the first year of the expanded open playoffs. Then we'll end with 3 keys this season for the Boise State Special Teams, and then a quick prediction section at the end. So this is a very packed video. Let's get right into it. Punting and kicking, man, like I said, is something that not a lot of people now do. I don't know if back in your day it was a little bit more common to see people in both positions, but kind of how did you end up being both? How did you end up in both of those career fields?
Yeah, it kind of wasn't, it was a little bit of a thing kind of when I was going around back in 06 and 10 through 10, and it was kind of a deal, but wasn't really supposed to even be punting and stuff. It just kind of, with Brad, just needed an extra Elkin kind of needed an extra year to get under his belt and whatnot, coming in as a kind of a true freshman. And so I kind of had a soccer background in a sense, and had done a little bit of goalie here and there, and it just worked out with Coach Choate's scheme of that rollout Aussie look. And I mean, it helped out a lot for me and for the coverage team. I mean, ball just did whatever, but those guys, I mean, most of them covered whatever they needed to cover. I didn't know where it was going. I just kick and get it out just before I got hit on anything. And So no, a lot of my success and numbers come from that coverage team and those guys just going crazy and putting their bodies on the line. And I think we might have, in my time there, I think the only guy that returned one punt back on us was one of the Rogers brothers at Oregon State, from Oregon State here, and that was probably the only guy to do it against our coverage team. So yeah, I mean, those guys were killer for me, so that helped out a lot.
Well, great coverage isn't anything if you can't get the ball downfield, and you just definitely did a great job of doing that. But coming out of high school, you weren't one of those guys that was on the top of everybody's recruiting charts, and you ended up walking on at Boise State. Can you talk about that journey from high school to Boise State and walking on at the program and what that journey was like for you?
Yeah, yeah, I wasn't very good in high school. I mean, I grew up around here playing soccer. Didn't start till my junior year, I did soccer, football, and then senior year switched over to football and I did both sides, defense, offense too, receiver, DB. They were just like, "Oh, you're fast," so I was like, "All right, that's cool." But then kicking, yeah, so it wasn't a thing, and then kind of got more serious when smaller schools came looking and talking, and uh, really was supposed to go up to Montana State Northern up in Havre, Montana. Um, kind of last minute found out that Jamison Davis, who was a local kid here out in Eagle, decided that he was gonna, I don't know what he was gonna do, something, um, either go to school elsewhere, but we'll open up a spot. And so I was like, well, guess I don't want to go to Montana. I'll stick around and maybe try to walk on. And Coach Ville was around, and Coach Riddle was actually here at the time when. So I just kind of annoyed the heck out of him. I had a coach that was working with Jameson at the time, out at Eagle. He went to Meridian, so he's like, "Hey, come on down. We'll get you just kicking on the blue," and just annoying the coaches. And they were like, "Well, we don't have anything to give you to walk on or a red shirt. We got a gray shirt for you." And so I was like, "Well, whatever. I don't know what that is, but it's probably a nicer weather here most of the time than Havre." I mean, Havre was fun. I was going to go up there with one of my best friends, and but this was a better opportunity for me. And yeah, so they're like, "Hey, we'll gray shirt you." And then Coach Hawk had left and Coach Rid had left to Colorado at that time. And I was like, "Oh, shoot, what am I going to do?" Luckily, Coach P came in and they honored the gray shirts and Coach Cho, and kind of the rest started paving its way with, Stringer and Montgomery kind of helping me get my feet underneath me and kind of showing me the way of what's going on, and kind of helping me out with my success, to be honest.
When did you officially earn your scholarship at Boise State?
It wasn't until going into spring camp, which right after that Fiesta Bowl. So what's that? Spring 06. Yeah, kind of going in. Coach Pete pulls me in. They're like, "Hey, we need to talk to you." I'm like, "Oh shoot, what did anything?" I think I went to classes today. No, but yeah. So he just says, "Hey, you earned your scholarship." And at that time, there's David Lowery is around, and he was another local kid out of Timberline, and he was a really good guy. And he kind of just, he didn't want to kind of do the thing, and he kind of said, "Hey, I'm out." And he was on scholarship and wanted to do something else and go a different career path and whatnot. And kind of that helped out and opened the doors. So there was a scholarship for me. And so it was huge. It meant a lot to just earn that. Yeah, it showed a pavement, just working a lot, just got me to where I was, and just wanted to continue on that success and that route.
Well, you earned your scholarship. 2007 season rolls around, and now you're the starter at Boise State, a school that, again, you knew about. It was in your local area, and you wanted to come to, but they weren't necessarily gunning for you. And then you earned up as a walk-on, and now you're the starter on the scholarship for Boise State in 2007. Can you talk a little bit about walking out to kick that first kick? 2007 was a great year for you. You only missed 2 field goals. One of your best seasons overall at Boise State. Yeah. Can you talk about coming out to kick for Boise State that first time? What it was like?
It's a little nerve-wracking. I mean, I'd been sitting on the side for over 2 years and hadn't had any sort of game competition. I mean, I grew up playing sports, whether it's soccer, basketball, baseball. I was playing sports year round. And so just kind of sitting back. And so coming out 2 years, kind of trying to get that rust off. And so, yeah, it was a little nerve wracking, but also at the same, I didn't have really any pressure on me. No one knew who the heck I was. It's just some local kid. They kind of probably looked at my stats. We had one couple long kicks, but that wasn't. I mean, that was about it. I didn't have that many attempts. I mean, we didn't do that in high school a whole lot. I was lucky that my coach did give me opportunities in high school, but yeah, it was a little nerve wracking, but also excitement, and just also there's really, you don't think too much because you don't have a whole lot of pressure in that sense because no one no one knows who you are yet. But yeah.
Well, those pressures and challenges would come even that 2007 season, which when you look back at the record books, it's one that kind of slips under the radar for Boise State fans because you had the 2006 Fiesta Bowl season, then the 2008 undefeated season. And so the 2007 season with Taylor Tharp sometimes can kind of go out of way. Boise State still had 10 wins that year and almost a win there in the bowl game versus ECU. But one of the biggest games of that season was the game versus Nevada, where you hit field goal to put them into overtime, then another field goal to maintain, match Nevada before eventually Boise State was able to stop a 2-point conversion there at the end. Can you talk a little bit about the pressures and challenges as they mounted being a Boise State kicker and how you handled them?
Yeah, that game specifically, it's try not to think a whole lot before you go out there. So, and I mean, I was kind of a young, dumb freshman. I mean, older freshman. I mean, I probably was about 21 at that time, I think. So I still had a little bit of maturity, but also I still wasn't thinking, whatever, like games on the line, kind of know that, that sort of mentality. And so you're not messing yourself up right away. But yeah, that game was fun, that pressure. And then, that was pretty much like Kaepernick's coming out game too. It was, I mean, he tore it up. It was an exciting game, defense, offense, special teams, held their own. Everyone was doing their part. Tim Brady came up with a huge stop at the end there to seal it. And so, I mean, that was a great year, just coming off of, what we had just done previously. It looked like a down year. Taylor and Bush kept us in it all year long. And, then Hawaii was that team. They had Colt. They had those guys, the receivers, the best. They had the running backs. They were a good team. And yeah, they ran everybody. And then we played ECU, and Chris Johnson's on that team. And, we see what he did in the NFL. And, we had a great team that first year. Just kind of goes on the radar, like you said. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about going from the 2007 season to 2008? That 2007 season, 2008 marks an era change in Boise State, where you go from the kind of plucky underdog, really under the radar. They beat Oklahoma, but they're really still that, not that Boise State ever loses that chip on the shoulder mentality, but kind of really that team that, okay, they might do something big, but you're never really counting on them, to the 2008 through 2011 years, where Boise State established themselves as a top 5 program, a team that was going to go undefeated on a regular basis. So
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that transition from 2007 to 2008? Was there any kind of different feelings or air in the building that you were on the verge of something special?
No, not really. I mean, obviously it's the Kellen Moore era. Like, that's the start of it. There's that 1-year gap, but I mean, we're just still coming off of a 10-win season where, obviously a bowl loss, but I mean, even from that Fiesta Bowl, like, nothing really changed in our mentality of how we went about things. The coaches, I mean, we kept the core of our coaching around. Coach Pete kept everybody in check. And so even that season, the middle season, it was good. And then we get to Kellen's, and I mean, everything still was clicking. We didn't know what we're getting with Kellen. I mean, it's, guy out of Prosser, Washington, most of the guys, California or whatnot, they're coming from a little bit of more, that football school, and not just, Washington. Nothing against him or anything like that. We just didn't know what we were going to get. And, thank God we got him. It turned out to be great, but I don't think we actually knew kind of what we were going to get. So nothing felt different. In my perspective, it could probably, and some of the other guys, but I mean, everyone was grinding. I got the opportunity to kind of sit back and watch a lot of the guys grind out, because specialists, I mean, they're not in it every single day. I mean, we are doing our things on the side and our stuff, and doing our own stuff, not in the trenches like everybody else. And but we are working on our craft. But those guys every single day, day in, day out, they were doing that. So I mean, that was kind of the mentality ever since I had been playing there until the day I was done. So yeah, nothing really felt a whole lot different from those seasons. But as we started getting going, we were like, all right, yeah, we've got something here now. It's growing. Everything we've grinded out, what we've put in, what the seniors before us have put in, it's starting to come and show to everybody what we've done. So.
Well, you guys go through that 2008 season, perfect undefeated record in the regular season. You go into the Fiesta Bowl. There was some feelings on the team that this and in the national country overall that TCU Boise State should have been a much bigger game than it was, kind of funneling both group of 5 programs into that. But it is an incredible game. Comes right down to the wire, 16-17 there at one point loss. And so 2009 rolls around, and Chris Peterson's big thing was that 2% better, right? And so you guys are trying to say, okay, we did great things last year, but it's not enough. It wasn't enough, and we're going to be better this season. Can you talk a little bit about what that meant, that 2% better, and the change in a little bit of a change in mentality and focus coming into that 2009 year?
Yeah, it's just doing a little bit extra, more than you think that should be done, whether it's going to sleep at 8:58 instead of 9 o'clock, like little things like that's the little things. And that's kind of always what he's harping on. You take care of the little things, everything else, it will come into play. And so yeah, that's kind of that 2% better is, just doing those things. No one's watching, keep doing them, whether it's school, whether it's on the field, whether it's at practice, whether it's out in the public, just being that good human, doing those things, it starts to translate in everything else. So yeah, and yeah, everyone bought in, everyone should have bought in, and we did. And I mean, it shows.
Well, and it showed in that 2009 season, another undefeated record, and now it's time for revenge, playing off in the Fiesta Bowl against, you now look at it, it's TCU again, chance to go get that revenge game from the previous year. And the game is an exciting one. I love all the Boise State Fiesta Bowls in the 2006 or 2007, actually is the year that it happened, in 2007. It's very offensive heavy performance. The 2014 Fiesta Bowl is a little bit of both, first half's offense, second half is defense. But 2010, that 2009 season, that was a defensive Fiesta Bowl right there. The offense it was really struggling to finish drives. Coming up until 9 minutes, 11 seconds left in the fourth quarter, and it's 4th and 9. Boise State has had 10 drives stall out. They've had a field goal, they've had an interception, and they've had 6 punts, but they haven't been able to keep these drives going. They haven't been able to actually put one in the end zone. The only touchdown they've had is that pick 6 that they'd had. So Boise State is facing 4th and 9 with 9 minutes and 11 seconds left. And you take the field for what should be your 7th punt of the game. Can you walk me through what happened next?
Yeah. Well, the Riddler. But yeah, so it's obviously, I've talked about it before. It was a play that was called probably, I think, in the second half, kind of a little bit before halftime. We were kind of sitting more towards our 45, 50 yard line. And TC had called a timeout, and I could hear him the whole time, like, watch the fake. And we're like, oh shoot, it's on. Like, we've got it going. Luckily, they called a timeout, and so we were able to keep that in our back pocket. But yeah, so get to that fourth quarter at that mark, and it's on. Looking at Percy and making sure he's got it. I'm like, oh shoot, we're actually going to do this. We're set up. Those guys, their backs they're up. We're good. This is actually happening. I'm like, all right, cool. And Roberson snaps it. So it's a little bit up, and I'm like, oh shoot. And so it doesn't give me much time, and I just grab it. I don't got laces, and I kind of just chuck it. I mean, it's kind of more muscle memory than anything. We work on that. I mean, every practice at the end of the day, we were working on that. That was kind of a different look that we ran with it. We've ran it before against Hawaii one time, and we actually came off on the left side instead of the right side. But so we kind of threw them out a different look, and I just chucked it up there, hoping Brady if I was there to catch it, and yeah, I was like, yeah, somewhere in the middle, he'll get it. And bummed he didn't get a touchdown out of it. But, it led to Doug getting in there. And, that rest, we took care of the rest of that towards the end of the game.
When they called that on the sideline, was there, I mean, obviously you don't want to like give it away by having an in-depth discussion with the punter. So what was your kind of, indications that was coming up? Was it just like, all right, we're rolling out the punt, and they give you like a hand signal? Like how did that work out?
Yeah, kind of coming off the side. I mean, it's me and Percy. I mean, obviously we're kind of switching. There's some offensive guys out there, but we obviously get in the huddle, and then we break. But the call's coming, and then I'm waiting for Percy to make that call. And whether we had a little hand signal. Whether it's he's got both hands touching his backside, or if it's one hand, it's off. If it's two, it's on. And he gave me the look that it's on, and then it kind of just was a little flash. Obviously, I was like, oh shoot, it's happening, and I kind of ran to the side, not really even looking towards the end of the play, and so I'm like, whatever, got it. Everyone got loud, so whatever. I think we got there, and yeah.
Well, it's obviously a play that sticks out in your mind, but even more than that is the end of the game, the win that came from that. Because like you said, Boise State goes down on that drive. They continue the drive. Doug Martin runs it in for a touchdown. Boise State ends up winning that game 10-17. And I've had a couple of your teammates on that have talked about that game. Winston Venable, who had that interception to end the game, and also Hunter White, who was part of the defensive preview for this video preview series. But can you talk about your own personal feelings about what that win meant for you, and then also just what it meant for the team after all you've been through that season?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot. We had been through a lot. We grinded through a lot. Just through the whole season. I mean, we were winning, but there's still ups and downs. We're grinding through practice and whatnot, and just to see all facets kind of, I mean, yeah, offense, it struggled a bit. We didn't put up the numbers we usually put up, but they still kept the drives going, still kept the clocks going. The defense held their own. We got interceptions. Special teams made their plays. We downed balls inside their 1 yard line. We made coverage. We didn't let the guys we stopped Curley from, they had Curley as a returner, and we didn't let him break loose. He had one little attempt that he almost broke loose. That would have changed a lot, but we were able to get that coverage. He tore my labrum on that play, but it was such a freak accident too. And I'm like, I hate telling the story because it was so dumb. And I'm like, I popped my shoulder back in place, and then that was like right after that we kicked that punt to down them inside their 1, and I was like, Roberson, do not put it over my head, please. But yeah, just that getting back to the season and kind of everybody, and just it was a relief. We did it our way. We grinded it out. We were a dominant team through special teams, defense, offense, and we showed that we can win not just with offense. We could do it elsewhere, and not have to throw up the 40 plus points we were doing. And in that way. Like we had a stout defense, and our special teams was good, and yeah, just it felt really good. And we felt also that both sides should have been probably not up against each other again. I think TCU should have gotten somebody in the big conference in the Big Five to play against, and so should we have. I mean, they earned that right, but it was the BCS era, and we kind of know how that goes these days, and went back in those days. And but yeah, it was awesome just to get back into that locker room too, and just kind of take a deep breath and like, holy heck, that just happened. We just did that. And everything we practiced, and everything just kind of clicked when it needed to. And yeah.
Well, I love that you talk about everything clicking when it needed to. And I also love that you talk about the offense, defense, and special teams all having to come together to get you to that point. Because Boise State in that 2024 season right now, they are at a point where the playoffs have opened up. They have an actual opportunity to get to the playoffs. And they have a great offense that's coming back. A lot of excitement about Ashton Genty and the run game, and some excitement about, former 5-star quarterback transferring in and what that might mean for the program. And a defense that is definitely going to be improved. There's no way that we're going to see the same performance that we've seen over the last year. There's a lot more experience that have come back onto this program, and then they've also brought in some great transfers. So with a lot of offense and defense, there's a lot of excitement going for them right now, but you can't win football games without special teams. I love special teams. If anybody knows watching my channel, they should know that I love talking about special teams, because I love offense, defense, I love the whole thing, but special teams is the one unit that impacts every phase of the game. The first defensive play that you make is on special teams when you punt the ball off, and the last play you make on offense is you kick that extra point through, or if you didn't make it into the end zone, that field goal. And so the book ends, and really throughout of every single team's performance is going to be that special teams. And so for Boise State to have a special season this year, they have to have special teams performances. And so we're going to talk about the 2023 season right now, just kind of review what Boise State did last year, and then we'll roll into previewing the Boise State 2024 season itself. So thank you so much for talking about your career at Boise State. And we'll, of course, I'm sure it will come up as we go through, and you bring your perspective to each of these different struggles or the good things that Boise State's bringing back. But I appreciate you going into that time, kind of giving us a peek behind the curtain of what it was like to go through and win that Fiesta Bowl for Boise State. So start off with that, with the positives. Kicking and punting. Like we said, Boise State has two of the best players, not just in school history at each individual position, but in college football in general. Jonah Dalmes, the Iceman, the GOAT, whatever you want to call him, he had 24 of 27 last year for 88.97% field goal percentage, which was up from last year where he didn't have a bad year, 85.2, but he had an even better one this year. Was 4 out of 5 on 50 plus. So consider that he was 24 out of 27, had that super high percentage, and then 4 of those were from 50 plus, including a long of 56. And then he was 6 of 6 for between 40 and 50. I mean, this guy, he trots out there, he's going to hit it every time. Punting, James Ferguson Reynolds, hashtag nuke the football. He had 55 punts for an average of 49.7 yards, which was number 1 in the entire country last year. He had a long of 71, so just 4 yards short of your average. You got to watch out. He might get that this year. He had 23 punts down inside of the 20, 36 punts that were 50 plus, and he averaged 50 yards a punt in 10 games. Again, unheard of performance. The guy, that Aussie-style punter coming from Australia, he's just had an incredible career so far at Boise State. And now we get to some of the negatives. The positives, kicking and punting, the two positions you want to be perfect. We're both perfect last year. However, there's so many more facets of special teams. So let's talk about a little bit of the negatives. As far as blocks go, only 1 blocked kick the entire season. They had 3 blocked kicks in 2022. Then they had 1 blocked kick in 2023. But they allowed 3 blocked kicks, 2 blocked field goals, 1 blocked punt, and notably that blocked field goal versus Memphis, that would have been the difference there in winning or losing that game for Boise State. It is interesting to note, and I'm just going to kind of hype again on James Ferguson Reynolds, the 1 punt that they did block, and it was a clean block, still traveled 30 yards. I remember one time that New Mexico played us, they averaged like 30 yards a punt on the entire game without any blocks. And James Ferguson Reynolds got blocked and still had a 30-yard punt. That's just how incredible James Ferguson Reynolds is. But again, a little bit back to those negatives. As far as returns go, Boise State only averaged 19.31 yards per kick return, just 78th overall in the country, and down from the 2022 performance. Punt returns, on only 8 punts, they only returned 8 punts. They had a 3.38 average, which was 120th in the country. And then on the other side for coverage, they allowed almost 25 yards per punt and a touchdown, which was 124th in the nation. And then on punt returns, they allowed almost 11 yards per punt, which was 98th overall. So some extreme positives and some definite need to work on. What was your take on the 2023 performance for the Boise State Special Teams?
Jonah and Ferguson just stellar, just crushing it, and keeping a level head all throughout the year. I mean, with all the craziness and with the sports world these days, and people wanting to do NIL deals with them and things like that, for them to continue that success all throughout the year, it shows they got a good head on their shoulders. They got good coaches around them. Tyler's around, Rosa's around with them. He's keeping those guys in check. Since he's been there, those guys, he's the special teams for those, at least kickers, punters, snappers, have been one of the top in the nation since Tyler's been coaching there. That's where you start really seeing success. And being one of those playoff teams is being in those little numbers, those little things get you to that point. You don't, those teams that are in those playoff games, they're not far off of being some of the top 10, top 15 teams in special teams, offense, defense, that sort of thing. So you see that our success when we were back in the day, we were in the top of a lot of categories in all facets of the game. Obviously these guys want to get to that point too. And, the spring, they look really good. I was out watching them, offense, defense, special teams, everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to be their best and give everything they got. So, it's just, letting things happen and, living in the moment and enjoying it. And one mistake, it's whatever, go on, move on. And, that's how their coverage team and their return team's going to go. And, I think they're going to have a stellar year, with the coach back, and, things are going to be a little different, and, it's going to be I think it'll be exciting. Watching Jonah and Ferguson, they've got a lot to live up to now. Like they've set the mark for themselves, and that's a good thing for those guys. And I think they can reach that to that next level and do better than what they did this year. And obviously comes with the offense rolling and getting those opportunities and things like that. But yeah, they got those two. They're great kids to begin with, regardless, and so they got great heads on their shoulders, great families behind them, great supporting cast. So I don't have any question and doubt that they're going to have great success this year. And, they're going to miss one or two and things are going to happen. It's football. Jonah's he's on another quest to get another mark of mine, and, he's going to get there. I know it. So it'll be all right. So he's got 5 years. I had 4, but it's all right. It's good. When records are happening and getting broke and things like that, that means there's success happening in the school, and the school's growing. And we've got Pettis and Titus and, Shoes, all those guys, their records are being broke too by the receivers. And that just means great things for Boise State. It doesn't mean like you're not talked about or you're bad or whatever. It's just like there's good that comes through. We need it. We want people that break records around here. That means we're doing something right, and they're on a good track. So yeah.
Well, we'll talk about breaking some of those records and also about bringing out the best in these players in the next part of this video. But part of bringing out that best in those players is the return, like you mentioned, of Stacy Collins coming back. He was the former special teams coordinator in 2021, which, if you remember, was Shakir's last season. Everything Boise State was able to do in the return game with him. And then 2022 through just recently, he was Penn State special teams coordinator. So at a Power 5 program. And then Spencer Danielson gets elevated to the head coach, and Stacy Collins leaves his his Power 5 job in the Big Ten, one of the top programs in the Big Ten and in the country, to come and return to the exact same job at Boise State. Now, he has an associate head coach also added to him, so it is a little bit of a level up. But as far as his base job, it's the same exact job. I mean, that speaks volumes to the culture that Spencer Anderson is doing here. He brings so much continuity with him and will, I think, breathe so much life into a unit that has looked a little lethargic the last few years. I think he's going to bring an immediate response. Can you talk a little bit about Stacy Collins coming back and just what kind of impact you think that will have?
And it's exciting to have a coach like that come back. Yeah, again, it just speaks volume of who Coach Danielson is as a person. To be able to steal him away from Penn State, like, yeah, come on, that's awesome. And I mean, just the culture of the town of Boise, regardless, he wanted to come back here. So that alone, he's probably going to feel a little bit more refreshed and ready to go. And it's going to bring some life into these guys, and you'll see some things happen. I'll be biased, and I've got high hopes for these guys that it's going to look good this year. And, it'll be exciting, kind of that Bronco ball back in the day, that special teams where we got back to blocking punts, but got back to blocking field goals, PATs. And I mean, that was always fun watching us block PAT, especially in Hawaii, and watching all that happen. And, but just doing those things, I think Coach Collins will bring that back, and there'll be some excitement with these guys, and the fans will be excited to see that again.
Stacy Collins coming back is going to be so huge for Jonah Dalmas, who's already had an incredible career at Boise State so far. But with that relationship that's already been established, who knows what he might be able to do in this 5th season, which, just to mention that again, this is his 5th year kicking for Boise State. And it wasn't necessarily a season that we expected to see out of him. He started in 2020. He's had 4 years at Boise State. He's broken a ton of records. When he joined the program, he stated that his goal was to be the greatest kicker at Boise State when he left. And looking at the record books, a lot of people would say that he's already there, but he chose to come back for that final tour, to use that COVID year of eligibility to come back. Were you personally surprised at all by that decision with, an NFL season or an NFL future potentially in the wings this year? Were you surprised that he decided to come back for one more season?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's funny because I ran into him and Tyler at the In-N-Out when it was in line one time, and right after the season. And so In-N-Out forgot some of my stuff, so I had to run back. And so I got talking to him in line, and Tyler's like, "Hey, should he stay or go?" And I'm like, "Oh, shoot, he's got another year." And they're like, "Yeah, COVID." And I'm like, "Oh, well, why don't you stay? Like, I mean, did you graduate?" No, I'm like, "Well, go graduate, dude, while they're paying you. Like, go do that. Graduate. You got one more year. Go get whatever you need to get done, and go do whatever you need to do on the field." And so I know it weighed on him a lot. And I know he talked it with his family and stuff. So, he kept it close. And I'm sure Tyler was a help with that conversation. I mean, I'll say that was only my part of the whole conversation that I had with them. And but he's got some unfinished business he wants to do here. And whether it's on the football field or if it's in the classroom, I fully support him 100%. Yeah, he could probably have gone into a team on the league, but is he, what does he want to do? Where are you going to be in the draft? Well, you can get a good year. I mean, he is taking a risk, 100% he is, and he knows it. But what if he doesn't? I mean, there's good money to be made in college now. I mean, it is what it is, and it's working out for him. And he's going to get there, and all the success that he's doing is just the hard work and keeping his head down and keeping the supporting cast around him tight knit, and having that help him through all this. And it's his family. It's getting him through it. So yeah, not surprised that he came back. I was really shocked to hear that he had a 5th year, and a little upset because I knew what that was going to mean. But yeah, no, I'm so excited that he's back. And it kind of just, I mean, him having that extra year kind of helps the team be able to transition into, after he is gone, getting that next one in line. Who is it going to be? Who do they have next up? Who wants to step up? And so he's setting the standard, and he set the bar higher than I set the bar, and that's awesome. That's what you want. Leave the program better than when you got there, and that's what he's doing. He's setting that bar high. So is James, and they're both doing it. And so yeah, everybody that follows those guys, you're going to have to be good. You're going to have to break records.
You heard it here first, Bronco Nation. Next year, when Jonah Delmez is out there nailing 60-yard field goals and winning us football games, the man partially responsible for him coming back, Kyle Brotzman. Keep that in the back of your head.
Any credit for that? I don't want no credit for it. Yeah.
Well, part of having a fabulous year this season, you talk about Jonah Delmez already breaking those records for Boise State. Coming back for a fifth year now gives him that opportunity to not go just down as one of the greatest kickers or the greatest kicker in Boise State history, but as one of the greatest kickers in college football history, because he's sitting right now at 80 career field goals. He needs just 4 field goals to break the Mountain West kicking record, and then he only needs 18 to break the NCAA record, which was set by NCAA state kicker Christopher Dunn recently. So my biggest question for you is, do you think he does it? Do you think he leaves with 98 plus field goals as the greatest kicker in college football history?
He's got a real good possibility. The way that his stats have been, and he's consistent, he's accurate. Whether it's 30 to 40 or 40 to 50, he's accurate. And so, yeah, I 100% think he gets to it. He goes down as one of the best, not just here, but across the country. And that's awesome. I couldn't be more happy for him when that day does come. So he hopefully they recognize him around here, then get recognition, and hopefully he can do it here on the blue and get that. And yeah, they take a moment for him. Hopefully they do that.
Well, let's move on to talking about the punting game here, because this is another extreme positive for Boise State. And I don't think he's overshadowed in any way by the performance that he's been able to have at Boise State. James Ferguson Reynolds, this is his junior year. It's crazy to say that it's only his junior year after what he's done so far for Boise State. Before we talk a little bit about what he's done and what he could do this year, can you talk a little bit about that junior year transition? They talk about it for quarterbacks a lot. It's a big talking point, that junior year bump from going from sophomore performance-wise to junior year. Do you think there's a similar effect for punters, that third year of playing experience?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, yeah, you obviously got another year under your belt. You're a little bit more developed. You're a little bit more mature, and kind of there's a little bit more riding on your shoulders. I mean, so the pressure's on a little bit more, just depending on what kind of sophomore year you had. And there's been a lot of good sophomore years, and for these special teams guys and things, it doesn't change as much compared to other positions there and on the field, but you're a little bit more perfected in your craft.
We're talking about perfecting his craft and improving. He did have an incredible sophomore year. 2022, 41.8 yard average, 7 punts of 50 plus, which is not bad. And definitely saw a big spike at the end of that freshman season. But then 2023 was an off the walls performance. In fact, it got to the point where, you never want to see a drive stall out and Boise State not put it in, but there was a little bit of okay, we didn't put it in, that's okay. But now I'm excited to see James Ferguson Reynolds perform.
Right.
You didn't want to drive to stall out, but it gave you a little bit of, just letting that the punting unit was coming out, being able to see him punt kind of made up for it a little bit, because 49.7 yard average, 29 punts of 50 plus. And it really feels like he is just hitting his stride. Like he can do even more than this. Part of the reason I think we saw such an improvement from 2022 to 2023 is 2022, it really kind of seemed like the coaches were pushing him more to that traditional style punt, which is not his norm. And then 2023, we saw more of a return to his rugby kicking form, which is what an Aussie punter is more used to, that Aussie rollout. You did both. I know that you leaned Aussie punting style, but obviously you did both. Can you talk a little bit about, educate us a little bit about just kind of the pros and cons of those two different styles and which one you preferred?
So I mean, the pros with that Aussie rollout is, I mean, you create hang time by having that rollout. So the con is you obviously lose hang time, but the pro is you're gaining that back, and then you could possibly get that roll, because it's going to be more of on the ground type of kick, and so it's going to be funky for that returner. You can get that fumble hit off of a player, or you can get a roll that can go 50, 60, 75 yards, that sort of stuff. Like, so those are the pros on that side, which me personally, I wasn't a traditional punter or anything like that. I was like, oh, this is fun because I could possibly take off. Like, I could possibly do it. There was always that option. And because you are reading that too, you're reading those guys on the edge. And if it's there, you take it if you can get it. And so that was always the thrill for me too. It's like, I might be able to. And, but yeah, I think that's where he is more comfortable at it. And I mean, we see that spike from his freshman to sophomore year. I mean, you're coming over from leaving your home, coming over to Boise, and yeah, and we could see him just get more comfortable into town, and that just showed in his play as his freshman season progressed towards the end. Like, those balls are starting to go. He's getting more distance, more hang time. Things are working. He's getting the kinks out. He's not getting probably as homesick, sort of, per se. He's getting more comfortable in town, and then we see that his sophomore year just takes off, and I love seeing it. And like I've said about Jonas and him before, just the nicest humans possible when you meet them, talk to them, and so down to earth those guys are, and funny as can be too. Specialist dudes are always weird a little bit here, but but we're always cool guys. Everyone likes to hang out with us, so
Well, I love how you talk about that potential to fake it with that rollout Aussie punt, because that's the last bit of the kicking punting discussion here. I want to talk about is that trickeration for Boise State. And that is something that we saw Boise State returning to last season. James Ferguson Reynolds had a pass of 21 yards versus Fresno State, a little dump off to Jaden Version, which conversion for the fourth down there. You also saw a couple of extra points that were faked by Boise State. And that's not been like something that's in their wheelhouse necessarily. And you think about Boise State, you think about the trick plays and all that, but they haven't faked a ton of extra points. That hasn't necessarily been their mojo to go to. And they did that last year. They ran a 2-point conversion with Luke Voorhees, where he ran it in versus New Mexico. And then Colt Fulton had a 2-point throw to Matt Lauder versus Wyoming. And both of those came off of that split formation look with the special teams, where they line up in this kind of spread formation and then they come back together. Was that something that was taking place in your day at all? What's your thought on that kind of like new trend for the split formation fake in college football?
Yeah, I mean, it was still, they did it back when I was playing too. Oregon was pretty notorious for doing that quite a bit, that little swinging gate action. I think it opens up a lot, whether it's a 2-point conversion, because you can steal a point. I mean, why not? And it's just one way to get ahead. And if it's there, take it. If it's not, bring it back in, get your 1 point, get out of there, or kick it away and move on. But if you can steal a play, or you can steal first down, why not? But it just has to be there. And probably last couple of years, maybe not a whole lot of trickeration, but maybe the looks just haven't been there, where some of the team, they were looking for that. Just, okay, this guy's covering on this side, we've been told if he's shaded on the right, we're not running it. Things like that, it can play a lot into calling that play off, or whatever they're running. So I'd love to see it. I love seeing trickery, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we are a little notorious for it, but I mean, it just kind of, it's not like we just pull them out of nowhere. We practice those. We do it. That is in our playbook. It's not like we're pulling things out of our back pocket. We practice a lot. We'll do it in the middle of a game. We'll do it whenever. We don't care. So yeah, it'd be fun to kind of see that stuff, but it just has to be at the right moment.
In the moment, who makes that call? You've lined up in this weird, like you said, swing gate formation, and either giving you the look that you want defensively. Who's making that call? Is there somebody on the sideline signaling in? Is it the kicker or the up man?
Kind of back when I was it was kind of more that up back. They're kind of just double checking, making sure that formation's right. it's a lot of scheme throughout the week. So in video in film room, they're dialing you in. You're like, okay, if they've got 3 over the top or 2 over the top, we've got 2v1 or 2v3. Like our odds are better than theirs. Let's take it. Things like that. So everybody is focused, but usually if it kind of depends. If the coach is saying, hey, look over me, let's get a check real quick, or they give that option to whether it's the holder or if it's an up back or something like that, whoever is kind of the general out there. But yeah, it's wherever the odds are, they're going to take it. And like I said, if you can steal a point, take it.
Let's talk about this last part of this video here before we get to the 3 keys this season. Is that team performance for the special teams, and like their individual performance, punting, kicking through the world, best that any school could hope to see. But returning coverage is something that Boise State needs to work on. And let's talk about that right now and what Boise State can do to improve that. So last year for the return game, kick returns, 19.31 yard average. They had 4 different players out there who returned a kick return, but Hayden Dudley was their main guy, 20.3 yard average, along with 49. And then for the punt return game, 3.38 yard average. And at one point, they just stopped returning punts. They just fair caught all of them at a certain point in the season, about midway through. But you had Kalani, you had Penry, you had Cobbs, you had Wright, all of them returning punts with varied degrees of minor success. And there was a big reason for why they stopped returning punts, because when you look at that list of potential returners and remembering that to start the season, the starter who was supposed to be the special teamer, Latrell Caples, gets hurt. So already your number 1 guy gets hurt. And then Kalani gets hurt on a punt return to start the year. And then Chase Penry, who's kind of stepped up, he gets hurt, not on a punt return, but on a reception later on. So he gets hurt. Cobbs, he got hurt as well. So basically you had 4 different guys that were all supposed to be starting at punter, and every single punt return, every single one of them ended up getting hurt. Ended up with Cole Wright there at the end, just basically fair catching. So for Boise State, they have a lot of things that they need to fix and improve upon. Part of that is just having guys healthy. But also, when you look at the 2022 numbers, they weren't significantly strong either. So there are some scheme issues that need to be fixed as well. I love having you on to discuss this, because back in your day, that was really kind of the renaissance of Boise State punting, punt returning and kick returning. I mean, oh my goodness, you guys had Marty Tadman out there in your 2007 season, averaging over 11 yards. 2008, you had Kyle Wilson, who was averaging over 14 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. He's one of the punt return gods for Boise State. Then Titus Young in 2009, he had over 25 yards and 2 touchdowns per kick return. And then over on the punt return side, you had Kyle and Chris Potter doing their thing with an average of over 11 yards between 2 of them. Then in 2010, Chris Potter averaged over 13 yards for punt return and a touchdown. Mitch Burrows had almost 16 yards for punt return. I mean, you guys were doing things incredibly special. And if you'll notice, there were a lot of different names on that list. It wasn't just reliance on one guy. And so when we look at Boise State struggles in the punt return or the kick return game, I don't like to think that it's just an issue with, well, we didn't have that dog. Because there's got to be somebody on the team that could have performed well if the unit was performing as a team. So can you talk about what it took to achieve that level of success as a unit?
I mean, it's just guys just buying in and, laying it out there to get something in return. And that's, the yards, it's touchdowns. I mean, you don't know how excited those guys are watching their dude run past them and getting a touchdown because of a block they made. And, there's pride in that return team. And a lot of guys, that was their way to get on the field and to play. And, they don't get the glory by returning the ball. It's their blocking. And so there was that pride that these guys had. And, it meant a lot because 6 plays, maybe, if they're backups, so you might get a couple on defense if we're up a lot, or offense. But so they made their time count. Made it most important. Our returners, they were awesome. It's, carry the flag. If one guy goes down, the next guy comes up. It's carrying that flag. We had that mentality when we were there, and that's what we talked about. But I would say pride in the end result would be why things why we were so special, I feel, in those units.
Pride results don't just come about overnight, and you really felt like while Chris Peterson was there at Boise State, that special teams weren't just something that was an afterthought that you kind of threw, just your backups on. You started Ian Johnson starting on special teams. You had Austin Pettis starting on blocks for coverage. Can you talk about what Chris Peterson did and the coaches in general, what they did to make special teams a priority, what they did to build that culture of perfection in that and pride in that unit?
From top to bottom, the coaches, they bought in too, and they felt that passion about special teams. We knew that, we're not going to always win games because our offense, defense, like those hidden yards are in that special teams game. And that goes from being on our 30 to inside their 10 off of a punt. Well, we just changed field position. They got 90 yards to go. Our defense can throw whatever they want at them, and they're inside their 10 or they're inside their 5. So on punts and things like that. And so, yeah, they made special teams it's a priority. It was no different from being an offensive stud or the defensive stud. Like, we had special team studs, and you were recognized. And so, yeah, it made you want to be on that team.
Well, for Boise State to fix their issues this year, I think a lot of that comes to reinstalling that pride and that focus in the unit and that return and coverage game. I think Stacy Collins coming back will be a big part of that, but also a little bit of it is going to be, not a little bit, a significant part of that is going to be the personnel side of things. So let's talk about real quick what Boise State has coming back. So obviously, Latrell Caples coming back for Boise State is going to be huge. I think it's going to lead to a big spike in the return game right off the bat. In 2022, had some nice spark, that 25 yards return. You were seeing him in spring ball looking like he was going to be that strong starter for 2023 and didn't end up being able to because of injuries. So coming back, Latrell Caples coming back right off the bat, I think automatically fixes a lot of woes. And then also, I think Chase Penry, I think that he's a guy who could also see a role, especially if Latrell Caples ends up with any kind of injuries there. He had a 23-yard return for Colorado. He averaged over 11 yards per return for them between 2021 and 2022 in limited action. So he has a potential. And then you've got some great new faces coming into this program. We've got running back Sire Gaines, who's come to join the team, an early enrollee for Boise State that the coaches are really excited about, an explosive talent that the coaches clearly want to work into the system. And you've got a strong backfield already. He's not going to get a ton of playing time back there, but one way that you could potentially use his talents is in that kick return game. So I think you might see Sire Gaines head that way. A guy that a lot of people don't talk about because Sire Gaines has been so explosive coming in is Dylan Riley, 6 foot, 185 pounds, the Jet. When you watch his tape, it is just straight speed, low center of gravity. He reminds me a little bit of DJ Harper in some of the way that he runs out there. I think that is a guy that could potentially come in. And when you're looking at already a deep running back room, maybe you could throw him in on special teams and he could have an immediate impact. And then wide receiver Cameron Bates is another guy, very fast and shifty. He played quarterback and wide receiver. He's a smart guy out there. He's got great open field abilities. But basically what I'm saying here is that you've got a lot of potential on this roster. Yeah. A lot of guys that can go out. You've got Stacy Collins coming back, who I think is going to do a great job of building that scheme. But if I was Stacy Collins coming back, the first thing I would do is hold open tryouts for the return position, because I think Boise State, last year they only had 6 guys return punts or kick returns. And I think that was really not tapping the potential of what was on this team. I'm sure that there were some guys that back there who could have had that immediate impact. And I think this year, with even more faces showing up and a lethargic performance last year for Boise State in the return game, you need someone who's going to come in with that fight, with that dog in them, that wants to show, like we were talking about, wants to show that they have a role on this roster and want to prove it mentality. I think that the best way to do that is just have open tryouts and find that guy that's going to be able to come out and perform, and he may be hiding on the sidelines right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's all they can do. It's who wants to step up, and who can. I mean, it's not fun. I mean, you're staring up at the ball and it's got a hang time of 4 or 5, and you got dudes running full speed at you, and you're just still looking up, and then you got to catch it and make a split decision before getting destroyed. Like it's not fun. And so I get where probably these guys don't want to do it. And I mean, it takes a crazy dude back there that wants to do it and is open to it, and and we'll just kind of find out who wants to be that guy. And I'm sure there's a couple guys on there that want to do it, and it's just kind of see who's going to fit that, who it works for. It's not for everybody, and but who wants to have that craft and then work at it, and who wants the playing time, who wants to get on the field, and that'll work, and who can be elusive out there and make some plays happen out of nothing. And I think this team is so talented, and the talent gets better and better year after year, just everywhere. And we got so much speed with these guys, and so it's going to be exciting to watch. I'm interested to see what these guys can do.
Well, I think that we're going to see definite improvement in the return game this year. Stacy Collins, like I said, coming back, I think is going to breathe life into this return game. But you also, like I said, have those new faces coming in, and then you have some old faces on this roster, like Caden Dudley, that have shown that potential. The season before this, 2022, he averaged over 28 yards per return. Now, it was only on 7 returns, but he's shown that he has that potential if the team comes around him. And so maybe Boise State doesn't have to go to a new guy. They just need to improve that blocking role and just kind of figure out the scheme that they're running with. Either way, you've got some great new blood coming in. You've got some guys coming back from injury, and then you've got some guys that are already there that maybe feel that pressure and perform even better this season than in past years. So as far as the return game goes, I'm incredibly excited about it. I'm not very much concerned about where that might go. The big questions that I have, where I'm looking at a special teams unit and saying, I don't know if we can immediately fix this, is in the coverage unit. I think that a lot of that comes from just gelling together and finding the right personnel. And I don't know if you can fix that in one season. Said last year, almost 25 yards per kick return, almost 11 yards per punt return. He also had just the one block. So if you're looking at a coverage unit like this that has had a mediocre and bad performance, and they're trying to fix themselves, how do you go about fixing that? How do you go about reinstalling that pride in that unit? You talked about Boise State's coaches in the past when you were there, really bringing that recognition to the special teams and making it an important part of the team. Do you talk a little bit about specifically what that recognition looked like, what the coaches specifically did to, obviously you had the bringing out the hammer. Can you talk a little bit about what that meant for the team and be able to carry that as a defender for Boise State or a special teams player? Can you talk a little bit about Chris Peterson's role and what the coaches did to really actually install that pride in the unit?
Yeah, we're all kind of, as humans, want to work towards something, and like a hammer. All right. Yeah, I run out in front of 30 to 70,000 people at a time to as a kid, yeah, that sounds pretty dang cool. And if you get the sweetest hit in the game, you get to run out with it. So, making things interesting for kids of that age, it's, we'll do anything. We'll run through a wall to carry a hammer out. And so, yeah. But it's for them just buying, and for the coaches to just making us, just buying in themselves and having that pride. It carries over. And you never saw one of the coaches like special teams is dumb. None of them are all a part of it. And so they all had their little positions and their guys they're coaching up. So if one of their guys is messing up, that's ownership on them too. So it's a coaching pride as well. So everyone took responsibility for everything that they did.
Well, the coverage unit, I think, again, is going to be one of those question marks that remain for Boise State. But you've got new life coming in with Stacy Collins coming back in and taking over this program. You've got improvements in the defense. Honestly, a lot of times you see the special teams to a certain point parallel the defensive performance, because a lot of those defenders, they're going to be out there. So if you've got some great top-notch guys that have a lot of awareness and a lot of ability on the defensive side, and you're performing well defensively, well, you're also going to see that trickle down over to the special teams as well. And the more depth you have on defense, the more proven depth you have there with experience, you'll also see that kind of have a role on special teams. So with the fact that I think the defense is going to be improved this year, I think we'll also see coverage overall improve for Boise State as well. Is it going to be a night and day difference? I don't know. I'm not like return. I think return is going to be night and day difference. Coverage, I think, is still going to have some things they're working through, but I do think we're going to see improvements. And that kind of gets me to my 3 keys to the season here for Boise State. So the last part of this section is just the three keys this season for Boise State, and any kind of final predictions for them. So my number one key for Boise State, number one key for the special teams for Boise State this year is fake it up. Boise State, they have some great potential in the trickeration there for the special teams. James Ferguson Reynolds is an all-around athlete with untapped potential coming over from the Australian rules football. He wasn't just out there just, lining up and punting the ball away. I mean, he was all over the field, making plays defensively, going up and catching the ball, making passes with the Australian rules version of those passes. So he's an all-around athlete. I think he really has some untapped potential. You're looking at a quarterback position that's going to be inexperienced for Boise State this year. The offense may struggle a little bit there to continue to establish drives. Ashton Genty's great, but you can't just rely all on him. And so especially earlier on as the quarterbacks, whether that's Maddox Madsen or Nelson, are trying to establish themselves in this system, I think you are going to see a little bit of some offensive struggles about just continuing and completing those drives. Having a drive alive potential, keeping a drive alive, potential to keep that drive alive through the special teams in the back of your pocket, knowing that that's out there, knowing that you have that capability if the look is right, can help you maintain momentum in drive, but also can instill a little bit of confidence in the offense. If they know that if they don't make this third down conversion, there's a chance this drive could keep going through a guy like James Ferguson Reynolds. It can install a little bit of confidence to really just kind of go and throw that ball out there, even into a situation where you're not 100% sure it's going to happen, but to have that confidence to go out and make the play that you need to. Also, I think that it will help inspire and fire up a unit that is trying to, I think, rebuild its culture a little bit right now after a couple of years of not being what they want to be in that return and that coverage unit. Having a big play on special teams that you can kind of look back and take pride in can help, like you said, install that pride in the unit overall. So, and I'm not saying go out there and fake every extra point. I'm not saying go out there and fake like a punt every single game in every single position. But I think that they have shown the potential to do that last year. I think there's going to be moments that it could be called for this season. And I think that Boise State should be making that not just a necessity, we're going to do it only if we're forced to, like a Hail Mary, but looking at it as something of, this is a play that we actually are, like you said, have on the playbooks, and we will run if the situation is right. A priority to run it if we can. So my key number 2 for Boise State is open up the return game. And by this, I mean, I'm quite serious. I think Boise State needs to go out there and have some open tryouts for their players. But I also think they need to kind of mix in throughout the season, especially if someone's not having that dominant role, see if some other guys have something in them that they just haven't been given the opportunity. When you look at the time that you had at Boise State, that 2007-2010 season where you were out there being a starter, Boise State didn't just have one guy, like we mentioned. In 2007, they had 12 different players return a punt return or a kick return. In 2008, they had 10, and in 2010 they had 9. Last year, only 6 players touched the ball in the return game for Boise State. And so Boise State, they like I said, they had their main guys out there, whether it was Kyle Wilson or Titus Young or whatever, but they also had, Ian Johnson would return a kick return once in a while. You had I believe DJ Harper went back there. I mean, you had different guys back there who were making their presence known and had something in them to give and contribute. And so for Boise State, it's find those guys that want to contribute and give them a chance. That doesn't always mean that you're going to find those guys in practice. Sometimes you got to give them a chance to get out there and see what they can do in pads, in the real experience, when the energy is flowing in the game. And that's when you actually see their full potential. It also put pressure on the starters to perform. And I think that scheme will fix a little bit if you find some of those players that are having that Avery Williams and Khalil Shakir type style out there. So for Boise State, my second key for them is to open up the return game, try and give some other guys some opportunities to see if they have somebody hidden on the bench who's got that potential. My last key of the game for Boise State, key to the season for Boise State, which is just reestablish the special teams first culture. Showing that true focus on the details. That was such a big part of what Chris Peterson did for Boise State, was being able to establish that focus on the details. Such a detail-oriented coach, and it showed through in the special teams performance. And so Spencer Danielson coming in as a brand new coach, one of those things that I think will really show his touch on this team and really show that he has that level of elite coaching abilities. If we see a strong spike in the special teams performance, because it will show that the right focus is being put on this unit. Like we said, at the end of the day, it's that unit that touches the ball first on defense and touches the ball last on offense. And so if you don't have that right culture and that right focus, you could have a great offense, you could have a world-breaking defense, but if your special teams is all over the board, you're still not going to go out there and win games consistently. So for me, special teams keys of the season: fake it up, open up the return game, and then reestablish that special teams first culture on the blue. We're going to end the last part of this video with just some quick predictions. And so for me, I think that Dalmas will break the record. I think he'll do it by at least 5 kicks. I think James Ferguson Reynolds has a chance to win the Ray Guy this year. I think that it will be one of his best seasons overall, maybe slightly lower average on total yardage kicked, because I think there were some special circumstances that got him into that. And hopefully the team is driving further into the other side of the 50 before they need him to go out and kick. But however, I think that while his overall average might be slightly lower, I think we'll see a lot more balls inside the 20, and I think he'll put up a strong showing and really put pressure on Ray Guy to select the right punter. And then at the return game, I think we see a resurgence in the return game. I think we have at least one kick return or punt return to the house. I think coverage will continue to struggle a little bit, but get slightly better. Do you have any predictions for this team this season, or a record prediction you want to throw out there at the end of the video?
No, I mean, I think those two guys, I think they get what they deserve this year, which is, all the success and whatever records are in front of them. I think they do get to it. And I think they have one hell of a year. And I'm excited to watch these guys. I know they put in some work this off season, and I'm waiting for it to seeing out there on the field.
It's going to be an incredible year. A lot of records up. Your total points record is definitely up there to be broken this season potentially. They have the most kicks in college football history as a potential as well. There's a lot of excitement around this unit. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. This is really one of the most excited I've been about the special teams for Boise State ever, with the potential we have coming back with both James Ferguson Reynolds and Jonah Dalmas, both proven track stars at this point for this unit. And then Stacy Collins coming back and hopefully being able to breathe that same level of perfectionism into the return and coverage units. This could be one of the greatest teams performances we've ever seen for Boise State, and it couldn't come at a better time with 2024 looming and everything that holds for the playoffs. So thank you so much for coming on and being part of this discussion. Thank you everybody else for watching all the way to the end. I want to know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on the video. Let me know your thoughts on this unit this season and your 2024 predictions overall. I would love to have you part of that discussion, that conversation with all of you in the comment section below. And is this the first video that you're watching in the playlist, make sure you go watch the defensive preview with JL Skinner and Hunter White. Make sure you watch the offensive preview with Mike Sanford. And I'll put a link to that playlist. There's some other extras in there as well. Spring game highlights, interview with the Steele brothers, offensive linemen for Boise State. There's a whole bunch of great content. And we have one more video. I said this was the final one. There's one more video in the series coming out. I'll be doing that in a couple of months with Jake Posey from Master Football, where we will go game by game and predict the record in the season for Boise State, give you a complete in-depth preview of the schedule for Boise State this season. So thank you so much for sticking all the way to the end. Thank you so much for coming on, Kyle, and being part of this discussion. Like I said, it was a discussion I've been wanting to have since I started the channel, and it did not disappoint in any way. Thank you so much for coming on and being part of this. Thank you so much for everything that you did at Boise State and your overall performance for Boise State. You'll live in the record books and the hearts of Bronco Nation forever. And thanks so much for continuing to be a part of the team and the fan base and continuing to support this program. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. It was awesome. Thank you to your wife and your kids for hanging out and just hanging out. And yeah, again, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on and being part of this discussion, and everybody sticking around all the way at the end. So as I say in every video, make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks so much for being here. And as always, Bronco Nation,